Everything we know, the entire universe, might just be a simulation running inside a supercomputer. In this dream world of the imagination, anything is possible. Join us on the Simulationist podcast as we explore our culture of simulations.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Simulationist podcast. This is the 175th iteration of the show, recorded on the 10th of January 2016.
136th the way through the year, give or take.
My name is Josh Trelevin, and with me that other voice that you hear...
Mathematical prodigy, Ryan Kirkby.
Yeah, you're all over the math numbers today, aren't you, Ryan?
It just seems to be something I try and keep up on, and once you start getting the numbers in your head, like the mental gymnastics quickly enough, you go from one to the other to the end, and it's like bada bing.
I guess, 2015 went by. Well, I mean, it didn't feel that fast, but I have a feeling 2016 is going to just zoom by.
Well, I know it's going to wind up being a long year one way or another, because the years are always long. And I remember thinking that when I was young.
Oh, it's a leap year, so.
Well, it'd be
we'll
okay, slightly. But I remember saying to myself when I was young, years are really, really long amounts of time. And just because I'm older and they seem to be slipping on by quicker, doesn't mean I wasn't right then. Okay. I think I was more right then than I would be now, saying how long it takes for a year to go on by.
Okay, yeah.
So I side with my 8-year-old self. As long as a year's one really long time, man. It's just like forever.
Your younger self had was not under any illusions, but your older self is.
It might just be, as an adult, I have to keep my focus on other things rather than the passing of the days and the weeks.
Okay.
And they seem to fly by quicker, whereas my younger self was much more of a laissez-faire, like day-to-day sort of thing. And so a year was a very long time because he was really grasping each year, day by day by day.
I guess, yeah, as a kid, too, like, you can't really control. Often you just have to wait for things, and it seems like it's taking forever.
Wait for the bus.
And as an adult, you're busy.
Wait for the next paycheck. So instead of, waiting 10 minutes for the bus, you're waiting 2 weeks for your next paycheck.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah. So, I side with my earlier self on that.
All right.
If only out of desperation.
I suppose. I mean, yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, if the time really is going by quickly, that means I'm going to become an old fart really, really quickly.
Yeah.
I'm enough of an old fart as is. I don't need to be even more so. On the other hand, the older I get, the older my daughter gets, and she's getting awesome and awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's got computer voice down now.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So I'm quite happy on that. I spent some time earlier this week, just me and her speaking only in robot voice.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. A real useful skill.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, though, is that that's not the only voice she has. Yeah. And amongst my family, like, my brother Adam is great at doing all sorts of voices and impressions. And it's nice to see that if it's not genetic, a factor for being able to do all those different voices, it's at least a very easily learned trait for us. Mm-hmm. We do it often enough that we're able to pick it up. And just seeing her being able to pick up the robot voice... winds up. It enlightened my heart. So yay!
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see what sort of other voices and crazy things she winds up doing as she gets older.
That sounds good.
I'm okay to do that as a parent.
Should we jump into what?
What you been doing though this week, Josh? Enough about me and my daughter. What I've been doing this week. What have you been doing in things that never really happened?
Things
this week?
that didn't. Well, something that did.
At least not fully happened.
I mean, today for me, it was a lot of different comedy shows. Like I went to Ratfish Monday, Northern Quarter Tuesday, The Mint Comedy Night on Wednesday, Ratfish again on Thursday. So all these comedy and like I've.
You're really
before,
the joker about town.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, I saw a lot of this, same people at all of those.
Well, that's the thing. Victoria is, it's a nice sized place, but it's not like New York City where you could have different people at each one of these places every night.
Yeah, I mean, they're some people are different. Obviously, yeah. There some people can make one, but not the other.
Too good for Ratfish, eh?
I mean, there's a core crowd that sort of goes to all of them. People who have lots of time on their hands, for example,
and want a good laugh,
and people who are working at becoming comedians. But yeah, so simulation-wise, I mean, I just heard a lot of jokes, I guess, which a
very eclectic version of reality.
Yeah. And aside from that, I played a little bit of Minecraft. This week I've been working on mapping the world. Like I occasionally jump into that and do a bit more of that. I built a couple of things. Like I have a pretty good town going on. I've talked about it before. The town of Vervia with all the horses. It's like a horse base with different stables for all the different colors.
And yet
of horses.
you don't have any mods that would allow you to mutate your horse base and to fill it up with horse soldiers.
No, I don't.
I am disappointed.
Okay.
You could have had horseman soldiers walking around, man.
I guess I could have. I mean, I'm mostly okay with just having regular horses that I can ride. But yeah, I added a tower, like a tower that goes just to cloud height, which is I guess is 64 above.
63, so I put it at like 127.
Okay.
Math.
Yep. So yeah, you can there's a platform under the clouds so that you can actually stand on it and
not worry about, where did all my vision go? Oh wait, there it is. It's just a cloud going by.
But then I built a spire way up just above the clouds, 20 blocks above the clouds with a nice big flag on it that you can go and you can climb all the way up to the top of that and stand on the flagpole. So
do the Charleston?
Do the Charleston? Well, I don't have that mod, the smart moving mod, which would allow me to do the Charleston. I don't think
One
that would
day.
actually.
What, you don't want to do the Charleston on the top of a flagpole?
I don't see why not. I mean, I'm not sure if I would go out, to the effort of getting a mod and adding an animation for it, but
putting in a classic Simpsons quote into Minecraft is, that's his own reward, really.
Oh, is that from? I just assumed that was something because flagpole sitting was something that was done back in the 1800s, late 1800s.
Well, that was the thing they were making the 1940s. The sort of era where you might see Al Capone lose a bet and do the Charleston on the top of a like a flagpole.
Yeah, I guess because it's combining the trends. Because I know flagpole sitting was a trend and the Charleston was a trend. I suppose Al Capone was a person.
Until the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, he was very much a trend. He was very popular amongst the people. It's just like a guy sticking it to the man until he slaughtered a whole bunch of other guys, and it's like, wow, this mob man is really violent. Who would have thought? And that kind of turned public tide against him, and he's the reason why you have the term public enemy number one.
Oh,
and it was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre that put him on the most wanted list. So he was the most wanted man in America. He was the reason we have these terms.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know
because I'm apparently just that old. I remember when that happened.
Well, yes. I guess you're the kind of person who has read Wikipedia.
Actually, no, not Wikipedia. It was just some old stuff correlated up with some of the old movies I was watching.
Okay.
Occasionally, I like to watch a movie and say, okay, this was from 19-something, so what characters that I know of would be alive and what ones would be dead? Like last night I was thinking to myself, H.P. Lovecraft would have been dead for 3 years when this movie came out, and it was the first werewolf movie, The Werewolf of London. And it's like, he never got a chance to see the first werewolf movie from Universal Pictures.
Somebody was, I was listening to another podcast, and somebody was mentioning that J.R.R. Tolkien was an avid sci-fi reader, and he was actually a fan of Isaac Asimov.
No, yeah, I can see that. What's the thing is, there was a very tight-knit group there for people that were just barely making money by selling their stories to these magazines, and they were loving each other's writing, and it was very, very positive, encouraged, amongst each other. And I kind of wish we could see more of that in, the online presence for today, except for the general negativity of the internet, like, lol, your story sucks, haha.
I think there might be some of that, like among people like Cory Doctorow, probably has a few friends, but I don't know.
It would just, it would just be really nice to know that there's a community out there where everyone's like, yeah, I like your story, I'm going to take a little bit of riff on this one, I'm going to write my own little story. And maybe it doesn't get to see like the outer publication of like the wide world of people reading on the internet that say, like Lovecraft, was able to get, with the magazines he got published in.
Well, I know there's one I'm aware of is called Neopsis, who I met the guy who publishes it at Godicon.
Huh.
And I haven't got around to actually submitting a story, but I know that there are, that's a thing. I mean, it's not necessarily super easy to get published in there, but it's you take a shot.
It's potential. I mean, it gets your name out there, which is the first step to, making money off of this sort of thing.
Yeah. And so, I mean...
Plus, it helps, exercise those writing muscles. You're not going to write good if you don't work it out properly, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I wish I could have the motivation or just sit down and actually do it, to actually bang out an actual, just a few short stories, and not even just a few, but like on a regular basis, just, keep on one a month.
Oh, looks like it's Wednesday. Time for me to write a little short story.
But I mean, that's, everybody's personal struggle, but I hope that maybe some of our listeners are also in a position to,
I like to write short stories. I just need some more ideas.
Yeah.
What if I could listen to a podcast that helped feature decent ideas and running with themes like that and go off on tangents that would help inspire me to create my next short story?
Yeah, and the podcast that I listen to, which is, all over the place, but when I listen to a good one, I get inspired. I mean, I don't actually act on it, but that's another issue. I
do partake on mental exercises, like how would I set up the scene? How would I, start it off dry open? Would I do a nice little, other style? How would I do that? And
I definitely feel like writing. I don't know how to describe myself. I know it's not... it doesn't count as writing unless you're actually writing. But I get that creative urge in me. It's not that I haven't ever written anything, but I don't. It's not a regular practice for me, unfortunately.
You are not in the habit.
Yeah, because I play Minecraft instead, and that's where my creative outlet energies go, is into Minecraft.
Yeah, I'll take that for my excuse too. That and I got a kid. It's really hard to write while you got kids wanting oh, I'm not being thrown in the air, Daddy. I'm so unhappy. Throw me into the air. And it's how am I going to focus my concentration when I have to take a break every once in a while and throw my daughter in the air and make her laugh and giggle?
I know. It's such a hard life.
I know. I just have to be a good parent. How dare I?
But the main thing besides that tower, the other thing I built was a nice map house, fancy, a good, this is where my maps are going to, although I built it probably 2 or 3 blocks too narrow. It's, I think it's about 20 blocks wide, and it's not quite enough to fit all of the maps sideways. It's plenty of room vertically, but I can't quite fit them all in sideways.
Well, blast the wall down, build further out.
I'll have to expand it probably a couple blocks. But it's very nice because for the background, what I put the maps on, I used bookshelves. So I made a lot of them, probably 4 stacks of bookshelves.
Oh, don't forget, Silk Touch gets the entire bookshelf, not just those books.
Yeah, sometimes I need to, if I need to move them, I use that. So it's bookshelves, and it's redstone lamps, because I think that looks nice with bookshelves.
It's a very nice style with them, yes.
Yeah, and then, so the way I do map rooms is I don't like to do a flat, wall to put the maps against. I do a stairs, like a 45 degree angle, so that you can basically walk up the whole map.
So you don't need to okay, now what mod I have that allows me to levitate so I can see what's going on up high there.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I don't need that. Although, just again, the vertical space of the map, just the way I happen to have my world, there's only 4 or 5 maps tall, so it probably could, I could, if I had it on a wall, it'd probably be fine. It's kind of a slanted room, the ceiling is a bit slanted too. So
that's okay. I've been working on a slanted design myself in Minecraft.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'll go for what I've been doing.
Sure. Yeah.
I was going about my playtime in my own little town, and I noticed a golem got loose from my little oreberry picking facilities.
Okay.
And
golem got out.
Yeah, I don't know how it got out. I mean, where it was, it would have had to gone through a solid wall and like a wall of oreberry bushes. Or it would have had to have gone through a solid wall the other side and walk around a pretty wide distance to get where it was. So I get the golem, and I find out, okay, let's double check the rooms, and it's okay, this one's doing good, this one's doing good. And then, one golem had moved into another room, and these are all, not like there's even doors for them to go through. The only access way for them would possibly be to walk through a wall or through a solid chest. And then one golem is missing entirely. I got no idea where that guy is. So I ended up having to do some replacing and make up a new golem to put it in and get my facility under, gear.
By solid chest, like, is it the Minecraft vanilla chest?
No, it's actually a Java barrel, which is like fully occupies the space. This is like a solid chunk bit. Oof.
Yeah.
There's no room around the edges, at least to my knowledge. I have no idea how these things did what they did. But it did lend me to the concept like, okay, apparently my design is not efficient enough or safe enough. And if I'm going to be doing oreberry picking facilities in my safe haven world that I'm designing up right now, I'm going to have to do something better. So I was doing some looking around, and apparently because oreberries will only grow at low enough lights, if you put a slab right over top, it'll qualify as light level 0. And thus you can plant it and be okay with it, and it'll grow properly, and you won't have to worry about whether or not you've got the space lit up.
I see, yeah.
And then, because the golems that would pick the stuff would have a radius of up to 6 squares, it was like a 13 by 13 room I designed, which wound up being effectively like a set of stairs, because there would be a slab in front of the oreberry, so they don't just walk up. I'm not certain if they take damage from oreberries. I know the golems don't take damage from stuff like cactuses, but I'm going to have to do some experiments where I'm pushing golems into like the oreberry walls and see if they look like they're getting hurt. So, weirdness. But right now, the current design is that there's going to be a slab on the top of it and a slab in front of it, so they have like half a square access to the oreberry, which they should be able to pop out and collect up, which would mean they're perfectly safe, and then they'll utilize that slab on the top as the slab in front of the next row. So it's kind of like a stepped ladder, like square shape as it goes.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm kind of digging it. I got some little designs I got scribbled around here somewhere on there. But I quite like the look of it, and I think it's going to look really boss when I get done. Because I decided, you know what, if it's up on an angle already, the square that it will be on, what if I make them stairs?
Yeah.
And then that way it'll have a much more smoother, like upside-down roof sort of look to it. And then because there's, 5 different kinds of normal oreberry, and then the essence one, I can make this with a 6 stack, so I could almost get something like those Chinese pagodas?
Yep.
Flip it upside down. Something kind of like that. And I think, with a little bit of ornamentation on the sides, maybe a little bit, like glowstone or, whatnot stuff, or heck, maybe even just, like your glowstone lamps, and just work off the side. I could create something that looks very visually interesting off of this. And the best part is how it stacks, because it's, as I said, like kind of like an upside down pyramid. I can put them like almost one stacking inside the other to create a really interesting look on that. Cool. Or if I want, I could just kind of make it like a series of crazy like little half, like upside down pyramids attached to each other.
Okay, yeah.
So, I'm very intrigued about my new design and how well it's going to add to the aesthetic appeal of my wonderful safe haven fortress. So, wee! That said, I could have gotten a lot more work done in Minecraft if I hadn't gotten lost in the Nether.
Oh yes, yeah, you and the Nether.
I hate the Nether because it's one empty biome, and it's not even a good-looking biome too.
That's true. Yeah.
And so, like, I got the mod, like with the Thermocraft stuff, so I got my thermostatic harness, so I'm able to fly around, and there's no monsters because I broke my game.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, I'm free to fly, woo! The only thing I have to worry about, like when I go to like a Nether fortress, is the monster spawners, because they'll actually still spawn blazes.
Okay. Yeah.
But I go there, and I'm looking through some of the fortresses, because in the Ars Magica thing, you can get how you learn magic spells, and your magic, the components that make up the spell is through various orbs. And I can either fight a tough boss monster for it, or find it in treasure. And it's like, well, you know what, I'm going to try and find it in treasure, because the boss mob is kind of annoying to fight. They have certain requirements. Like, in order to get the lowest level orb, the blue orbs, I have to fight one of 2 bosses. The one that appeals to me most would be the water elementals boss, which I can only do when it's raining. And I'm in the desert, and I have a habit of sleeping at night, because I want to maintain, I'm role-playing a semi-sane individual, so I sleep, usually at night, because that's when you sleep in the game, right? And so I'd have to wind up staying awake, like, at least one night, wait for the, to rain, which I can only tell because I'm in the desert because, like, hey, I think the clouds are a little darker gray than normal. And then I wind up going off and, throwing some stuff around, summoning a boss monster and fighting it. And it's like, I was able to do that, and I was entertained for a while, but it's like, I can spend my time doing other things instead. So, I go exploring a few of these nether fortresses, and I know the north-south way, so I was able to find a few of them fairly easy. Once I found my first one, I just went north from there.
Oh, yeah.
And then I tried going home, and it's just like I lost track of where home was because everything looks exactly the same to me. And it's just so boring. I seriously spent some time this week looking around for mods that would add some style and maybe some creatures and some plant life to the nether just to make it look slightly different. Like, oh yes, I remember those 2 trees over there next to the lava falls. I must be going in the right direction. As opposed to, I think this looks like the lava falls, but they look like every other lava fall that's happening around here. So yeah, I spent 3 hours real-world time trying to figure out where the heck I was in the area before it's like, okay, let's get this right. Okay, no, I had the wrong coordinates. I had the coordinates for the temple that I have my portal connected to in the overworld, and which is not the same coordinates in the nether. So it's like, okay, get my proper set of coordinates. Where's my notes on that? 10 minutes later, bang, I'm there. But I do have to go back to the nether and absolutely flatten a nice little area so I can really notice, like, hey, this doesn't look like everything else. Like, I don't know, maybe I'll take some flint and tinder in there and just make a big, large X in flames. Find the large flaming X, you're home, buddy.
Yeah.
So, ugh. But, oh my goodness, it's just, I hate the nether. It just seems so undone. They oh, okay, yes, we started the nether, now we'll finish it up, and then, like, years later, nothing change. So yeah, I'm looking at some mods, which I'm actually not too happy with because, like the way I've got things planned for growing everything, I'm going to need to have more boxes for storing the trees or plants I'd get from the nether, and it's like, more storage thing I'm going to have to work out. But I might content myself with just the Metallurgy 3 mod, which will add just new ores. So that way, while I get lost, at least, ooh, I need this ore, ooh, I need that ore, ooh, look at this ore. So at least I'll have more of a fun time as I'm lost in the nether. And, I don't know, maybe that'll be enough to tip my opinion on it. I doubt it. But yeah, I was the long story in a nutshell, losing golems and just create,
Yep.
Yeah. Other than that, just sitting around, just waiting for things to work on, because, I got the Buildcraft stuff, so I'm slowly processing all the oil I found and turning it into fuel.
Right, it's all automated.
Well, it's pretty much automated, but if it only holds like 8 units worth of fuel into its reservoir. So unless I do some other setup, like a huge column of like raw oil and have it pumped directly into there all the time through some stuff, which I might want to do, there's a chance that it'll run out of fuel, and then the engines fueling my refinery will wind up blowing up, which will cause not like TNT explosion, but will cause an explosion if gone on too long. So
that's a fun thing. That's Buildcraft, right?
That is Buildcraft, yes.
Yeah.
And I do find it entertaining because Thaumcraft is nice because once you get it, it's good. I mean, that's what, the whole premise is, like, whoa, well, why don't golems have to have magical energy to keep them working? And the guy's like, no, because it's magic. You pay for it up front, and then there's no upkeep. That's kind of what differentiates it from the more mechanical mods. Like Buildcraft, where I have to keep an eye on these engines to make sure they don't overheat, so that I can get everything done. Otherwise, I have to build a large amount of infrastructure to make everything happen. But, each comes with its own trade-off, and I'm appreciating the differences between them right now. So, hooray! But, just so long as I don't have to go back to the nether. Like, I am so burnt out on it already, and I only spent 3 hours in there.
Yeah, I mean, I spend a fair amount of time in the nether, and I'm basically fine with it. I don't like to, I have attempted to build, like, more permanent sort of bases in the nether and be like, oh, I live here now. But I've always been like,
I might have to make that a goal for a future map, just to just force myself to find a way to love it. Dang it.
Yeah, but I did always get tired of it and be like, okay, well, I'd rather, not go insane.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you go in the overworld, you got your dirt sort of thing, and then you got your stone. And with the mods I've got, you find your patches of limestone and and marble and other things. So it has some variation. But when you're in the Nether, it's just netherrack, soul sand. For some reason, I'm getting regular gravel in there. I don't know if that's something wrong. Like, do you find gravel in the Nether?
Yeah, there's supposed to be. Yeah,
okay.
Gravel's a thing.
So it's not something glitching out in my game, but it's just those three there, and a whole bunch of random lava, and with the occasional bit from my Tinker's Construct, just one piece of ore here and there for Ardite and Cobalt, and that's about it. And it's so monotonous. There's very little change. It's a hell biome any which way you go. So I don't know. Maybe it's just not my thing. Maybe even though I spend a lot of my time in a desert, I can just walk out and, oh, hey, look, no, there's some grassland. Oh, hey, look, there's a mesa. Oh, look, over here, there's something else. But no matter which way you go in the Nether, it's still the Nether. Always the Nether.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen people sort of propose different sort of sub-biomes for the Nether, and I guess...
Well, I mean, I think there's the options there. I mean, like, how many rings were there in Hell? There were 7 levels of Hell, wasn't there?
In Dante's Inferno?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's not a classical thing where you can't say, oh, hey, look, there's a big thing of like a tempest. Why don't we create like some sort of tempest biome where everything's like whirling around and you're fighting against winds to be in there?
That would be... I mean, that almost feels like it should be another, dimension.
Well, I mean, in D&D, it is pandemonium, by and large. But you could also make an argument like, oh, hey, there's that one layer where people are, like, stuck up in their necks. They can't taste the water underneath them, and there's, like, an apple dangling over in front of them. They can't eat the apple, and it's for the people that were really gluttonous. They're forced to not be able to partake in the stuff they want so badly. And it's like, well, why not have some sort of, like, hell swamp? Why not, right? And it's just there's just so little done with it. It just seems like it's not like there's a lack of material for hellish things to happen.
Yeah, I don't know. And, well, I mean, vanilla Minecraft hasn't been updated, like, all year, I don't think.
Yes, it's the first time ever it's been a full year without a major update.
Yeah.
Although, apparently, the major update's going to be one heck of a major update.
Yeah, well, I guess we know about, like, the wings and stuff like that already. Right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, just the combat stuff alone is going to be very, very different.
Yeah, there's some combat changes. You can't swing your sword as fast or something like that.
Well, I'm okay with that. Like I said, before, I got the chopper that effectively gives me, slow swings normally. But I still deal 40 damage. I mean, most creatures go down in just a few hits with that.
Yeah.
I mean, like 1.9 is also going to give all the new stuff for the not the Outlands, the end.
Yeah.
The plants and the things going on there, and there's going to be new crops and all that sort of stuff.
So, yeah.
It will when it does come down the line. It will be very big. That said, I think they could have split it up, put out the end stuff in one mod, one like the 1.9, and then just save the combat maybe for a 1.10.
Maybe. I guess.
I think it might be that they're trying to put out too much all at once. When here's a little bit more, because I mean some of that purple sort of stuff looks like I wouldn't mind working with that. It looks like something I wouldn't mind going to the end to find. But right now the end's just those crazy pillars, the end stone, and like nothing else.
Yeah. Well, and I
am looking at some mods that'll add more to that too, just because apparently I'm not the only person who thinks both the end and the Nether seem very, vague and just blank.
Yeah, but my favorite part of Minecraft is still like the main, the world, the dirt and trees and rocks.
It took me years to even make it to the Nether. So yeah, the overworld is fine by me. Although I don't, lie on this one. I do appreciate the crazy worlds from the Mistcraft every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've shown you, I got stuff with like pools of like rodentium, like radioactive like liquid, pools with pillars of xenon gas that was supposed to be a pool as it just rises up there and floating, crystal clouds in the sky. Sometimes it's kind of boss. That said, even that has a lot more variation than the Nether. It gets me time and again.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. I was able to put aside the Nether because I was finally able to get a copy of Brave. The Pixar tale about, like the Scottish lass that did not want to get married.
Okay.
And so
that's the plot of the story?
By and large, she really didn't want to get married. She did not want to be the princess she was. She did not want to be pigeonholed in that sort of lifestyle that she never felt was for her, and everyone else gets to do other stuff that they want to do, but she never gets to. I won't spoil too much, but it was such a nice thing. It made me completely forget about like being stuck in the Nether. Like I wasted almost the entire night trying to get back home. I'm so upset. Like look at all the lost time I had. It's like, no man, don't worry, man. There's a great movie, and it completely took my mind off it. It was wonderful.
Okay.
I liked the music, which was interesting because sometimes with those movies they use much more modern songs. Sometimes they go classic. This kept it with like a Celtic sort of sound going to it. That was
like
not
what, like pipes or panpipes and
panpipes and Enya sort of thing was just kind of going about it. Not obtrusive, and it added to the atmosphere whenever the song was going on. It didn't feel like, oh yeah, I'm going to listen to this song later on. Yeah, man, yeah. Okay. It's like, no, this only heightens the scene as music is supposed to do. So it's like,
yeah, good. Okay.
I like the story about the whole thing. I don't want to say what to do, not to spoil things. I didn't expect the movie it was going to be. When they were talking about like someone changing their fate, like, what would you do to change your fate? I kind of assumed the movie would wind up going like, let's see, what's a good movie to describe? What's that Jimmy Stewart movie again? That's always on Christmas.
A Wonderful Life?
Yes, yes, that's the one. I figured it would be much more like A Wonderful Life, her seeing what life would be like if she never was. But it wasn't like that, so it's like, this is not what I was expecting. So, it's like, hey, I don't get to predict the movie all the way through. That said, I was able to make some predictions about, the stuff that was mentioned in there. So, I am still on the ball. I wasn't like completely, oh my gosh, I have no basis for what's happening here.
Okay.
Really well animated. My daughter did not manage to actually watch it through. We got it for my daughter, but she just did not seem to be into it. And she watched like 5-10 minutes, and then she wound up going off elsewhere to watch other things. Okay. But my wife and I watched it the entire way through. My wife dug the accents.
Yeah.
She, and that's the thing.
Do they have Irish accents?
All of them have Scottish accents, which worked very nicely for me, because if I have one major, complaint about something like How to Train Your Dragon, it's why do these Vikings have Scottish accents but their kids have none? And so it's like, no, if you're like, like a Viking, shouldn't you have a Norwegian accent, maybe? Shouldn't you have Scandinavian sort of speaking style instead? Why do you all sound like you're Scottish? And why do your kids have no Scottish accent?
Well, I mean, it's possible. I mean, we know that Vikings lived in England and Ireland and Scotland. And
they took wives, from that thing and all that. And all that. So it was something that happened. But this was, it just seemed like okay, so even if you do have a reason for your Scottish accent, why don't your kids have it?
Well, maybe it is that whole thing, like with the Vikings moving into, the Danelaw in England, and then their kids are sort of growing up among English.
But they're not.
They don't have English accents either. They have like American accents, right?
But the thing is, like the town of Burke was like a very vertical island that had like almost no contact with the outside world. In the later movies, Hiccup is shown exploring the lands around. They don't even know their neighboring islands. They are very much a secluded community. Where did the lack of an accent come from? Or in this case, where would the American accent have popped in on them?
Well, maybe, I mean,
if they had an American accented teacher to teach the kids, and you don't even give them the proper accent and all that sort of stuff. It's like, okay, I guess the kids picked it up from the teacher while the adults were being out being adults, right? So I was like, but that's never been explained. It's just like, no accents with the kids. That's it.
Except that, this is, I guess we've established this is a fantasy world. It's not necessarily, the Shetland Islands, the Orkney Islands, or the Hebrides, or...
Although there was influence from them.
Okay.
we can say.
But yeah, it really, like, canon-wise, it's its own universe. Right?
Yes.
It's not
well,
ours.
it's got dragons. It's definitely not ours.
But I think it's not. I mean, it is a cartoon, but at the same time, it sometimes happens that a younger generation will have a different, maybe not quite as radical as that, but will have a different accent than the older generation.
But there's usually a reason for that.
It's just that young people tend to, like, sort of do their own thing. Like, that's...
But now here's the thing with the Scottish accent. Do you know where the Scottish accent derives from?
It's the Scottish.
It's from trying to speak English when your native language is the Scots Gaelic.
Partially.
Originally, that's where it came from, and then the kids wound up adopting it. Now Scots Gaelic is like one of those languages where it's like, oh, only like like less than 1 million people on Earth know how to speak it, like properly. It's very, very ill-spoken. It was suppressed by the British for a long time, so it kind of helped cut down the numbers. But the Scottish people still have the accent, even if they don't have the language that originally gave them the accent. Which is a bit of a head trip when you think about it. When it's like, you got the accent from this other language, now you don't know that language, but you still have the accent, because everyone else speaks it that way, right?
I think, though, it's not necessarily the case, because the version of English that is spoken in Scotland is pretty ancient. So it's probably closer to sort of like the variation that it would have shared with a very early English, like an Anglo-Saxon type of deal, and then that language was brought, along with, because the Saxons they influenced Scotland too, so they brought that language to Scotland and sort of mixed with the people there. So it would be. I think they have roots.
They have roots for language, but the accent still persists, and it's apparently a strong accent, because even when you don't know the language where it comes from, the way to speak it, the accent still persists. And then you have like these kids that just don't have it, and like in one generation it gets lost, and there's no explanation why it. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just that kind of guy, but it got me.
You're thinking about this wrongly, though, because it's not that. I mean, yes, it sounds like they just lose an accent, because we don't think of ourselves as having an accent, but we really do. Like, our accent is just as weird and distinct as
the American accent sort of thing. I have been told internationally Canadians are prized ESL teachers because of all the English-speaking subgroups. We have the least amount of accent.
Well, I think
it's much more neutrally toned than like one end here, one end there.
I think the reason they say that is because it's
or maybe they're just trying to flatter us to work cheaper. I don't know.
I wouldn't say it's not an accent, but maybe it's like in between the other accents.
It's a much more neutral end of the accent. It's not as severe as say a Scottish person trying to teach English to say Japanese students. Which I think would be absolutely hilarious to hear a bunch of Japanese students suddenly trying to come into North America speaking with a heavy Scottish accent. I feel sorry for them, but I found just the concept to be hilarious.
But interestingly, I think there are British accents found in England and stuff that are fairly easy, like similar to what we think of as Canadian, as in like it's fairly easy for most people to understand because they're sort of closer to a standard.
A Liverpudlian accent would equivocate out very closely to the Ontario accent.
Yeah.
For all like when you think about how the Beatles speak, now you just add a little bit of A at the end there, and you say you're a boots, and then not too far off. So I'll see that. The Canadian accent would connect up to some of the more middle ground sort of accents in the British end.
And I would imagine it has something to do with whatever was taught in schools. Like England, they sort of taught a standardized version in all the.
Well, they tried to. English has got a lot of accents.
Public or private schools, which are the good ones?
Private schools are the equivalent of our public education.
Yeah, so it's exactly opposite of what we have.
Just to make things confusing.
Yeah, so public schools in England are the hoity-toity fancy schools. Yeah.
But yes, long story short, though, Brave didn't have that issue. The only person that didn't speak with the Scottish accent was the witch, who was supposed to be like a humorous, anachronistic sort of style, and her raven familiar.
What accent did she speak with?
She could speak in Gaelic apparently, but she had much more of a modern tone and inflection to everything.
Okay.
So yeah, she was supposed to represent, like, in which case the lack of an accent marked her as being something otherworldly and different in that case, which I'm perfectly willing to buy from like an ease of convenience. Oh, why didn't she sound like the same as everyone else? When she's like this old, lady, she should have like an older style accent. It's like, well, she's a witch, and this helps set her apart from everyone else. That's if everyone else has the accent, and she doesn't. She seems much more, otherworldly. Which, she doesn't need to have any crazy accent on that. I mean, just having her speak differently is good enough for me. Thumbs up.
Yeah.
Although there was one young gentleman in there whose Scottish accent was so thick, the other Scotsmen had a hard time even understanding it. So kind of a play on, the concept of like, yeah, there's Scottish, and then there's like super Scottish, where even the Scottish people can't understand you.
Yeah.
Although I think I was able to get the gist of what he was starting to say. He seemed like a good guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the other thing, though, is like you wouldn't necessarily be analyzing it so closely if you spoke French and the film was dubbed into French and they just threw in sort of, oh, here's a Quebec accent for it to stand in for this or that.
Yes, I think I'm much better positioned in that case, being that we all kind of spoke English.
Yeah.
Because the translations, sometimes you got to make a cut as to what this means, and like the hiring directors, it's not like I'm sharing, notes. Like, okay, this is all the notes I had for who I want to hire and why for the, the cast. Could you translate that yourself and find people who would do something equivalent in this other language?
I think with the bigger movies like Brave, for example, I think they actually do that.
They
like
try
all the European languages,
but with all the amount of languages out there and all the things you got to translate out to, there's sometimes you got to make the cut and say, okay, just make sure she's got it sounds different than anyone else. The end.
It depends on your budget and but I think these
or the market
movies,
audience. Like if you're going to go for like the Cantonese audience, you make sure you get this right. I do know when they're translating the various Japanese accents into English. There's one dialect, for a very rough sort of part of town, for one of the rough towns in Japan, gets traditionally translated into a Bronx accent in the North American dubs. Simply because, hey, what's a tough place to live? The Bronx.
Yeah.
So, you get your Bronx or your Brooklyn accents in there. And, so there's equivalencies that make things easier, but it's not always a guarantee. But suffice to say, it didn't have any of those little issues, so I was able to seamlessly watch it, dig the stories in there, and just really dig into the grist of it rather than getting stuck in the fluff. Like, wait, what's happening with the accent?
No. Just like we just did for I don't know how many minutes, but...
Well, that's the thing. It's like, because I didn't have to have that internal argument with myself as to like, well, why wouldn't they have this sort of accent? What's going on here? Bada bing, bada boom. I'm in. I'm following the story that much clearer, and it was very, like... When I was done and the credits were rolling and I was relaxing, that was a good movie, I was able to have that, hey, I didn't even have to get stuck up or hung up on any of these little things. So thank you for those who made it, for making sure that it was kept as nice and smooth as it was.
Well, I guess, that's one thing that's useful in movies is, and that's why there's like little pockets in, like, India has Bollywood and Nigeria has... Nollywood? I can't remember what they call it in Nigeria, but they have their own little film industry. China has its own, because it is true that cultures will have not only their own stories but also their own little languages and cues that people will only pick up in that language. Yes,
I've been. I remember a few of the Stephen Chow movies I've got, Kung Fu Hustle, and the like, where it's actually worthwhile to watch it again with the director's commentary. Translated out to English, of course, for me. Cause
you see little, cultural explanations.
Yeah, as they explain why this what happened here. It's like, okay, so you couldn't get that going with the thing there, so you worked it this way. And then there was some stuff like when it translated, the Shaolin Soccer. In the original one, it was like American drugs make the bad team bad, whereas in the English language dub, they didn't want to offend the Americans and like somehow insinuate that Americans just use drugs for all their sports.
Okay.
And things were getting pretty bad, at the time, like a few scandals. So they just decided to make it illegal drugs. So they switched American to illegal, and then there wasn't an issue. But they did have some time explaining as to why it's like, no, there was some stuff coming out, and we didn't want to look like we were teasing our American audience because we respect them, and we know most of them don't do drugs.
I see.
Or at least they assume they don't do drugs. So hooray, you know. So yeah, you know, it's just definitely, I think, worth listening to some of the commentaries, especially when the language changes over.
Mm-hmm.
Or in comedies. I remember having a good, fun time listening to the cast commentary for the original Scooby-Doo movie, the live-action one.
Yeah, so that is interesting
Yes.
that like the sort of the culture of Ireland and the stories of Ireland, because they share a language with us, we actually can, you know, resonate with a movie that's sort of set in Ireland or a fictional fantasy version of Ireland.
I did have some issues with some of the names they were using, like King this, Queen that, and you're a witch.
Yeah.
As opposed to finding something much more true to the land.
Did they not have kings and queens? And
they had people in a similar position of power. I don't believe they actually used the term king or queen. I think maybe Thane might have worked a little bit better without needing much of an explanation, although I don't believe the little area they were in was big enough for a proper Thane.
Yes, yeah. When did England conquer Ireland? When was that?
I have tried to disavow myself of any and all knowledge on there because everyone is still so angry about that. It has tired me out too much to care.
Was it Oliver Cromwell or was it before that? Because I know he like did some bad stuff, but that might have been when they conquered.
It was around that sort of era, so you know, post 1500s. I know that.
I think so. Yeah. So like medieval Ireland would have spoken Gaelic or Irish Gaelic.
Irish Gaelic, yes.
And some Latin.
Or Gaelic, I suppose, if you want to use the proper spin on the words.
Yeah, the clergy would have spoken Latin.
Yeah.
And then, English would not have been that common of a language, so they wouldn't have used terms like king or queen.
And that's the thing. I was keeping an ear out as to trying to figure out when this was taking place.
Uh-huh.
And yes, during the one part where they're describing like the accomplishments of each of the young male suitors,
okay.
One of them, mentioned how many Roman legionnaires he wound up defeating. And so it's like, okay, this is likely pre-Christian, given, the influence of the Roman legions in the British Isles.
Right, there wouldn't be any Roman legions after 400 A.D. Or so,
and that's the thing, is it would have had to be at their height of the power to make it all the way up towards the Scottish lands.
Right. Well, they built Hadrian's Wall in what, 0 or...
It was pretty far back, yeah. So I had to get some estimates on there. So it's not like I had to worry about any priests on there. So witch would not have really been a thing to use. Something more druidic would have wound up being it. Maybe she's a seer or something instead of just saying you're a witch. But for the purpose of convenience, because let's face it was a kid thing, coming up with a proper term for it historically would have meant for a little bit of confusion. Like, well, what does that mean, Mommy? It just means she's a witch. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I was able to forgive that sort of stuff just for the sake of, okay, we're making this go on. Although I would have appreciated, hearing some of the proper terms. But that's just me being, the nerd I am.
Well, I am actually, now that you mentioned, I am curious if they actually did a version maybe in Irish Gaelic and dubbed it into,
I
Probably
might
not.
have to look that up.
There wouldn't be a huge demand for it, but it might be an interesting, artistic way to...
Yeah. Disney's not known for going all the way out on that sort of thing, but they are known for having fun with it. Yeah. So I could see them doing that.
I would be interested to look up just to see exactly which languages... Like, there's probably a standard set that every major release gets released into, 12 or so languages or whatever.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I figure if it's related to the portion of the world where they're talking about, they should put an extra focus on it.
Yeah.
So I believe Mulan, they should have really made certain that one just flew like nothing, absolutely nothing wrong in China. You do not want to get this wrong. Right. This is the first time you're telling one of their stories there. Don't mess it up, buddy.
Yeah.
And I hope everything went. I never read up on whether or not they fumbled somehow.
Who knows, yeah.
But there was one bit that caught me, and I'm not certain of what to think about it. They're talking about for the male suitors and what they did, and Merida, the protagonist, the young woman there, she is ugh. I mean, the suitors aren't that bad at guys, give or take. I mean,
Like, if you get to know them.
Well, that's the thing. It's like the first guy presented. You can do like the whole peck dance sort of thing. He's got the long hair, but he's a little self-absorbed sort of thing. And when things don't go his way, he winds up doing a bit of a tantrum, which that's not attractive. Spoiler alert for everybody in reality: temper tantrums aren't attractive.
Okay.
But otherwise, he didn't seem like that bad a guy. The other one, the one with the really thick accent. He was strong. I mean, he's got a piece of, like, a log in his hand. It's not just a piece of wood, but a log, and he just breaks it, like it's a loaf of bread sort of thing.
Okay.
And although I wasn't able to truly understand what he was saying, he seemed like a really good guy. So it's like, like, if I was to understand him, I was like, yeah, I could see us being friends. He seems like he seemed rather nice, lighthearted, and very positive. So it's like, okay. Okay, maybe he was a little round and overweight, but it's not a bad thing, especially in that day and age, right?
Yeah.
And then they go to the third guy, and this is like Conan the Barbarian. He's like twice as tall as anyone else. He's ripped. And then all of a sudden, the guy's like, and he killed like 1,000 Roman legionnaires with a single hand and all that stuff. And then like Merida, she's like, I'm not paying attention to any of these doofuses and all that. And then she's looking all of a sudden, ooh, like what's up with this guy? Before. Spoiler alert, joke twist sort of thing. Oh, no, his son's actually behind that guy. It's just like their bodyguard. And, the guy's name is Wee Dingwall. That's actually his name.
Okay.
He's, there's the big Dingwall, and then you got the Wee Dingwall. And so, he's like, just like, got kicked in the head with a horse out of it sort of thing, look to him. So he's not, like, oh. And so there's that one bit where it's like, she's like, oh, I'm not interested in marriage. And then there's this... There is the man of men. And every time he's in a scene, like, he's, like, just owning it. Like, this guy. Like, he's in, like, several scenes throughout. Like, people are throwing things, like, a bunch of arrows get shot out, and they're like, everyone ducks, and hides behind for cover, and he just grabs the arrow out of the air, and like, it's nothing.
Okay. Oh.
And, like, everything he's doing, it's just like, is so much better, and it's like, this would possibly be the only person that really interests her, because... Well, dude is like the man amongst men, and he's like so calm and collected. But no, he's not one of her potential suitors, because it has to be, like the eldest of, like the clans.
Yeah, I see.
So, but she does use that to her own advantage, in that she is the eldest of her clan, so she fights for her own hand. And because she gets to choose the sport of her choice, she is good at archery. She manages to get and say archery, and then just outshoot everyone else. Which causes a kerfluffle, because, dude, you can't do that. This is against tradition. But that actually segs into the topic for this week, because I found the concept of, like, the Disney princess, because she was a Disney princess, not getting married is a very much change in tradition from the formula.
From the Disney formula?
Yeah, the Disney formula.
So she doesn't get hooked up or married in the end of this movie?
I guess spoiler alert, but not really a spoiler alert. She proposes that before they get a chance to win her hand, they should win her heart. And the young men all agree this is a good idea. I mean, the one guy who did the best in the archery championship, so even if you get like her scores like rubbed out, he would wind up being like the suitor. He didn't even really seem to like her. He's like, oh, this was your idea, Dad.
Well, I noticed your descriptions of them, that none of them seemed that interested in her.
I mean, fiery redhead that knows what to do, like a bow and arrow. What's not to like, right? Apparently flouting tradition's a bit of a negative, but they all make the say like this is a great idea, and they wind up leaving with everyone else, but apparently they're going to come back to like woo her at some point down when she's more ready for this sort of thing. Yeah,
Brave too. She finally gets married.
Well, the concept of her being ready for romance is it's not even something she wanted to be a part of. She wasn't even told that she was going to like have all the clans were going to come and all that until the letters came back. Yeah, they've all agreed to come along with the eldest of the clan to fight for her hand in marriage. She had no say in this. So this was, like from at least the modern perspective, like she's not in the wrong on this. Like if you're going to marry somebody, at least let them know they're in the process of the marriage proposals, right?
Yeah.
So it was rather nice to see on that one that they had the view of like sure she's the princess, but just because she's the princess doesn't mean we're going to all fight for her and like we're going to marry her right now. Daggone it. And it wound up being a nice subversion. In the end, she still remains a single lady, although she's she's very much better off in her life, so she's going to spend some time to grow into the new role and realize her full potential, as is at the end of all Disney movies. She's like, oh, I realize so much more about myself. Now I have to figure out what that means about me. And that's part heavily after, apparently.
Okay, yeah.
But if this had been done wrong, just like, okay, we're going to do things different for the sake of doing things different, this could have been a very poorly done movie. But they managed to make everything work together to explain why, and and how to layer up things so that this subversion didn't feel forced. Because there are times when people are doing things different simply because, oh, well, it's always done this way, so I'm going to do it the opposite of that way. And then it just seems rather hokey. Like, I hate to say this, but from what I've heard and seen from some of the Satanist, religion, they try and do the opposite of Christianity because they're like, Christianity is kind of like dualistic, so you do it all backwards or upside down. Now it's Satan stuff. It seems rather hokey. It seems rather like, oh, you guys are just doing it backwards to flout the church. It's like try and find your own way to do things. You're saying the opposite stuff.
Rather than sort of just saying, yeah, we're rejecting the religion entirely. It's like, no, we'll take sort of some of the iconography of the religion and just use it in reverse.
Yes, yeah. So you put the cross reverse, which actually doesn't really work because you get like the St. George cross being the other way.
St. Peter's cross.
St. Peter's. Thank you. Sorry, I have a hard time memorizing those. But yeah. Sorry note. The guy was going to get crucified, but he was able to convince the people that was going to crucify him. It's like, hey, the Lord of my religion had this happen to me, and I'm not that good a guy. Could you invert it just so like nobody thinks that I'm trying to be as good as our Lord and Savior? And they went, fine, whatever. So they crucified him upside down, and that made him happier. So, well, whatever floats your boat, I suppose.
Okay.
But yeah, when done I guess maybe a better example I could use is Bizarro, the opposite, the imperfect clone of Superman. And Bizarro does things the opposite of Superman, and so like his powers go weird. Instead of having like a heat vision and frost, breath, he has like fire, breath and frost vision.
Okay. Yeah.
And so things go differently, and things are backwards. Originally, because he's like, I don't like you, Superman, so I do everything opposite of you do, and then he winds up with this crazy Bizarro speech. Me, I'm no like you. Is a nice way of saying, I like I like you a lot. Like me, I'm you, I'm worst enemies. It's like, dude, you're my best friend.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it took a while for that to go from something that looked like it was either making fun of the mentally handicapped through his speech patterns, and just being like, oh, he's trying to do the opposite for comedic effect. So a lot of people saw him not as a potential villain or sympathetic character, but more as comic relief. Which sometimes he still is. Sometimes he still. It plays better when he's working with a straight man, like Bizarro and Jimmy Olsen was apparently a great series together.
Okay.
But it took Bizarro a long time to find that nice little mix of where the opposite was, and like where not to go too far opposite, so appear getting just weird for the sake of it.
So what you're saying is you're taking the sort of the tropes. So this is almost like on a meta level, sort of.
Yes.
Writers have the tropes of all the tropes of Superman, and you're taking them and turning them, doing whatever is the opposite of them, or at least in some sense the opposite. You can't be 100% opposite.
Well, see, that's the thing. Just before Infinite and Crisis Earth, back in '86, they gave Bizarro an ending, and where Bizarro realized Bizarro is trying to be the opposite of Superman in everything, and Superman is alive. Therefore, Bizarro must be dead, and he kills himself.
Oh,
the end.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you could have gone out with a much better ending for him. Bizarro, I think, from what I've read, works best as like a tragic sort of character.
Mm-hmm.
With a little bit of the comic undertones, because sometimes it's funny to see like Superman's all boring and straight-laced, so do the opposite. It's like, no, actually, I kind of like the way Superman is, because Bizarro, the way he's doing it, is just like, no, that's not. No, come on. But it is funny and entertaining to watch, which I guess is why Mitchell Spitlick winds up creating him time and again.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like for a long time there was a lot of people saying like, I don't find Bizarro funny. I don't find Bizarro helpful for anything. I don't like Bizarro because he was the opposite for the sake of being opposite, and people were trying to make it as opposite as possible, which came up with some good stuff. There's Harete, which was like Earth backwards. He creates an entire planet, and then because Earth is a sphere, his planet will be a cube. So it is perpetually referenced as being the like a topographically impossible planet.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's currently at Earth -1 in the multiverse's numbering system. It is so far bad it doesn't even work on the proper numbering system. It's in the negative.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and he works things backwards, and things go different, and just fun stuff like that. And it winds up, like done right, it winds up working. But when it doesn't work right, it's bad, because sometimes subverting the tropes, you're working on the untrodden ground. And the best part about a trope is it's a well-beaten path. You know how to work it. Like you've probably seen almost any given trope like a dozen times by the time you realize it's a thing, and thus you know the path.
Yeah, well, it seems a little bit like it's a different thing when you're talking about breaking tradition, and as in the girl doesn't get married at the end of the story and does something else.
Well, you could say, like a Disney plot works in this formula. Princess gets imperiled. Prince comes to the rescue, saves the princess, defeats the bad, villain, usually because the bad villain slips on something and falls to their doom, and then winds up, like getting married to, her. The end. And in which case, a lot of the case, you can make an argument that the princess really isn't even the main character. She's just the main MacGuffin.
I think that's the case in a lot of Disney movies, and that's been a criticism leveled against Disney for the 20th century. Basically, was that the women were not fleshed out really; they were just sort of objects.
Although I think you can make a very good turning point around, say, The Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast, for them having at least personality.
Yeah, I think it was sort of little steps in the right direction. Yeah.
But then you come up with
they still end up marrying the guy at the end, but it's a little bit more of the girl being.
I personally would have been much happier if Beast had remained the Beast and Belle decides to love him anyways, because she knows the person inside. He doesn't have to become the handsome prince he once was, because the handsome prince was an ugly man inside. And thus the Beast, even when he's a beast, is much better and much more a noble soul than that horrid little prince he once was.
Mm-hmm.
And in which case, the point actually gets kind of ruined when he becomes a handsome prince at the end. Saying it's okay if you're ugly, because if you're good on the inside, one day you will magically become handsome on the outside, which is kind of like the ugly duckling story, but it doesn't actually always happen.
All right.
So I would have been happier if the Beast had stayed the Beast, because, well, he's also cooler that way, and more marketable. Like, do you remember what he looked like after he became the prince?
Not really.
Very few people do. You'd have to Google it to look at it. He's very generic.
Yeah.
So yeah, he would have been much better off as the Beast, because at least he's his own guy then. Oh, but still have all the hired help go back to people. They didn't have to be turned into living dish plates and stuff. That's just a horrible torture.
If you magically got transformed if you woke up tomorrow morning and you were the Beast, your body had changed,
8 feet tall,
and really strong, and but otherwise your emotions weren't changed.
I'm still who I am on the inside.
Yeah, I don't know, and let's see. I wouldn't
wind up being abducted by the scientific Illuminati establishment for testing purposes.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I'm trying to work out now, because I'm trying to.
I would have to spend some time making sure we get all tests done up on this sort of thing. Because dude, if I'm suddenly waking up this way the next day, I want to make certain I know what's going on as much as anyone else. But do not remove me from my family.
Would you call into work and say, "Yeah, I'm not coming into work today"?
I don't think I could go to work. I think the amount of hair on my body would prevent me from being hygienic. Well, I don't think I could really work in a lab without doing a full body suit. I'd have to be in one of those hazmat containers to operate in a lab anytime in the future. Simply because the amount of random hair getting off would wind up just getting everywhere.
Okay, well I'll also throw in that
when I've as a lab, I couldn't take off my face mask for fear of getting errant hairs from my facial hair into the media. I always had to have it. If you were a bald-faced sort of person or a lady, you know, like, go for it. Yeah, take it off as you see fit. But if you got yourself a facial hair, take it down, and you always cover that facial hair. That was the rule. And I abided by that. As long as you can fit it underneath that surgeon's mask, go for it. If you can't fit underneath there, you're going to have to trim it down. It's not a sanitary thing for the slab.
But, like at your work now, they don't make you wear a mask, right? They don't make you...
No, although it is required of proper length and cleanliness and trimmed.
Okay.
We have had people with longer facial hair in there, but they always had to have it perfectly trimmed and not like braided out or anything crazy like that. Had to be done in a nice little swept back sort of style.
Okay,
so it wasn't.
I'm going to alter the scenario. You wake up as the Beast, but at least for now, with the same amount of hair.
How about
you find that you have a bit of stubble, so you think it's going to grow out a little bit more.
So instead of the Beast, can we just say something like a werewolf, where I could say I have fur? That way we could say like a pretty much body-defined length and knowing what's going to happen on that one. Because let's face it, the Beast, bestial was much hairier than most mammals tend to be outside of the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, he was a big, bushy-haired guy.
Yeah.
No, though, here's what happens.
Okay.
You wake up, and you're, like, really buff, and you're like...
Sweet!
You have the same amount of hair that you normally would have. But
I would feel guilty. I do believe right now, I do not have the body I want. I do have the body I deserve.
Uh-huh.
If I figure I deserve a six-pack, I should probably be doing enough, belly crunches to get myself a six-pack. So I would feel guilty about suddenly waking up super buff, given that I had not earned the body.
Okay, well, all right. So that's
my personal philosophy. I'm just going to toss that out there just to make certain everyone knows.
But you have like beast tusks, like, and you look really, and you have like your eyes are. I don't know if the Beast had like
he had
like
regular sort of eyes. That was his
he had like
feature.
blue eyes.
He still had human eyes.
Yeah, okay. So you still have human eyes,
which I think may have been an allegory for the fact that he still had a soul.
And I guess you wouldn't have claws, but your fingers were like
I got sausage fingers enough as it is, but we're talking about like big old think Vienna sausages going on here.
Yeah, and you sense that your fingernails want to grow into claws, but you could still trim them, and you could still shave yourself.
Okay.
And your eyes, I don't know if you shave your arms or whatever, but yeah,
An awful lot of shaving, but okay, yeah.
But yeah, you wake up one day and you're like that. Do you go to work?
If I could get myself a sweater to properly cover up everything properly, I'd give it a shot.
Yeah. Oh yeah, your clothes are magically because whatever magic happened to make you do that.
Oh, how thoughtful of the magic! I'll send a thank you note.
Okay.
But yes, that's the thing is, I only have a proper sleeved shirt at work, but we should have some long sleeve stuff to make it work in such occasion of exceptionally hairy forearms, which I will qualify this as.
I would imagine I don't think they have a policy about people with extra hairy arms, so I imagine you could
all hair on the body should be kept at a manageable level and not be considered wild or unhygienic, such as so if you wind up having a mole, with a whole bunch of hair, and you're not supposed to braid your hair off the mole and anything like that. Right. You got to try and keep it conventional. That I do believe is on the back of the employment forms.
Okay.
So I'd still give it a shot.
Yeah. Okay. And then
heck, there's hairnets at work. If nothing else, just wear the hairnet over the face as well. And see if I can't cover the whole darn 9 yards, right?
Okay. So you never and then. I guess you have to work because it happens on what's your first day? Wednesday?
Yeah.
Whatever.
It doesn't matter which day it is. I got bills to pay. I got to go to work when I got to go to work.
But eventually you get a doctor's appointment, I suppose. Is that what you would do?
I think I could convince the doctors to come to me under a situation like that.
You think so? You'd call the doctor up and say, can I have a house?
Dude, I have suddenly, undergone sudden lycanthropy. I'm going to need some help here. Unfortunately, it's either going to have to wait to the free clinic after my work hours, or I'm going to have to do some juggling with the babysitter, to make things work so I can go on.
Well, and the doctor's office is you're talking to the doctor. They're like, are you in any immediate danger?
Would that qualify as an emergency room sort of visit? Dude, I suddenly grew a 6-pack, 3 feet, and hair all over my body. I think I might need to go to the emergency room.
And they'll basically say, if you feel you need to go to the emergency room, you can. But it sounds like It sounds like you don't need immediate.
It sounds like magic, not science.
Attention.
So I'm going to have to say you don't qualify for the emergency room.
They're going to
take some quartz crystals and have fun.
Yeah, but the doctor's office is going to talk to you and say, listen, just when you can in the next couple of weeks, we'll make an appointment for you. You can arrange for a babysitter.
Blood sample, stool sample, all the whole.
Yeah, we'll get you to in the system. And
drool
all that.
Samples, everything that can come out of me. Give a sample of it.
Right. And I guess it's just like sort of having any other medical emergency. Although technically, like, you feel healthy. In fact, you feel better than you've ever felt in your life.
Oh, that's the thing. I mean, like, I'm just thinking about, like, what's his face, Rondo, the guy who wound up getting gigantism.
Although it's very difficult. You can't fit in you can just barely squeeze yourself into your car.
Well, forget the car, man. I mean, the weather's not doing too bad these days. Yeah. And I'm freaking buff. I'm jogging to work.
You find it's like
I got stamina
like
plenty,
easy.
man.
Yeah, you got all the stamina. Your constitution score is like 22 in D&D. You find you have amazing strength. It's a little bit more difficult to manage the vegetables and condiments, but I think you can probably figure it out.
Well, just because they're so much relatively smaller,
Yeah.
I'll make it work. Just do a little sprinkle style.
Yeah, you eventually you get the hang of it, and then
if anyone just doesn't agree with me on is that enough, well, then they got to argue with an 8-foot tall furry beast man.
Okay.
So I think it could actually make work a lot easier for me.
All right, so this lasts for a couple weeks, and you finally get in to see a doctor, and
I'm hoping I get in there before a couple of weeks. I mean, let's do it now, buddy.
Okay. The doctors, they find nothing wrong with you. They're like, well, they assume, like, they think it's kind of weird. They think
take some dog treats to make sure your fur comes out nice and lustrous.
They're like, we don't know how this would have happened to you. You seem healthy. I mean, and the DNA tests come back.
Have you been walking out in the moors late at night recently? Because we have a historical occurrence of that, and that might help explain some of your symptoms. But you are expressing yourself on a more permanent basis than our historical records would indicate.
But they ask you like,
ooh.
Oh, what?
Because this would be like the first modern case of lycanthropy. Could I have them rename it to rycanthropy?
Possibly, yeah. You pitch that to the doctor, and he's like, well, we'll see. Like, right now, in fact, the doctors are like, you don't have a disease. You're just a different creature. I mean, you're still technically human. The DNA says you're human, but obviously
you're expressing
your
genetics in quite a unique way.
Yeah, so, I mean, maybe we can call it something, but it doesn't even look like a thing. So, okay.
I'm totally the lycanthrope.
Yeah, okay. Well, they'll think about that. I don't know.
That's how I tell the people in the media to portray me as.
Yeah.
I go to the Times columnists, man, make sure they get a good deal.
Actually,
they could utilize a little hit to their circulation.
Yeah,
the story of the lycanthrope.
Yeah, they're happy to run a story. In fact, it becomes media from all over North America and Europe and the whole Japan. They all want to come and interview you, talk to you. You even get a book deal.
Ooh. Ghostwritten, of course. I mean, like, do with my massive new hands. It's going to be hard to type that,
right? Yeah. And in fact, you kind of get a little bit famous. You're not, like, money isn't really flowing in, so you kind of still have to work.
In that case, I team up with the Centaur and we go off on adventures. But only on the weekends. I still got to be a dad on the weekdays.
All right.
Hey, that sounds like a good premise for, like a decent cartoon series.
Yeah. The Beast. The man who woke up as a beast.
No, it should be like modern sort of like dungeon delving adventures. It's like we go out in the dungeon adventures and all that, but I got to be home, for the kid, I can only do this on weekends. I'm not a single guy anymore.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is why I'm like
everything has to get agreed through with my wife. I'm going to say that because if she starts saying like, "No, I want you back the way you were," I got to get back the way I was.
Yeah, well,
I got to get people to bite me. I got to become like a werehuman.
Should we ask her what she would think of that?
She wouldn't give it too much legitimate thought. Well, it's fairly far out there.
This is the next. Yeah, maybe not. This is the next.
I'll show her some images of werewolves and see if it's like, does the body form look good? Is he looking sexy or is he looking creepy?
The next part of the scenario, which I think should be the last part, is that finally someone like uncovers an arcane tome. And is like, aha, this is exactly what happened to you. They figured it out in ancient.
Cool story, bro.
In Iraq, they find in a tomb somewhere.
Let's keep things over in Scotland, sort of thing.
Okay,
because the werewolf is a nice European tradition, so that would make sense.
Okay, Sure, I will say that.
Well, just that way we can, loop back in with Brave and all that fun stuff, right?
Right. Okay. And they say, well, yeah. I mean, we found that the cure is actually fairly simple. We just read this incantation, sprinkle a little of this, dust and
keep it away from me, please.
Werewolf blood on you, and that's all we got to do. So at this point, this has been lasting for 6 months, we'll say. You've kind of gotten used to it. I don't know if you've decided to shave everywhere or just let it grow.
Honestly, there are hairy people in my family, and they seem to be doing okay with their body hair. With only the occasional waxing as needed, I'll be fine.
Okay.
Besides, I mean, if I'm in the media, I got to keep my look up, which means not shaving. Got to keep that bestial hairy look going on. Ooh.
Okay. So yeah, and yet by this time you've appeared on Ellen.
Can I go on Conan too?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know about. Well,
if I'm doing the book deal, sort of thing, I think Conan could have me as that third guest, to the final one of the night, right?
All right. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. You somehow managed to get on.
Hey, is he still doing that weird thing with that masturbating bear character? Because I could fight that thing.
And somebody, the deal hasn't gone through yet, but you hear some producer in Hollywood is like, no, we're going to put you in a movie, and you're going to have your own movie.
Dig it.
But it hasn't happened yet because these things take time, and they're still writing a script, but they're like, don't worry, we're going to get on this because.
Can you make it part of the Marvel universe? Sweeten the deal a little.
Oh wow!
Get me in some of the late Phase 3.
Oh
wait, I'd have to actually. I after this, I am gonna have to go on for a search because I know there are a few werewolf-like characters, but the only one that comes to mind is the female, one character who's actually a mutant. So it's I don't know if there's any actual characters that I could take the role of. Screw it. I'll just throw me in as a sidekick on the Ronda Rousey as the Captain Marvel movie.
Yeah.
So she does stuff out in space. It'll be fun.
It looks like offers are coming in. It looks really cool.
Bottom line, I'd have to ask my wife if she prefers me the old me. Go for it. If she digs the new me, stick it.
Okay. So you've got that was the final question. Was you've got the cure ahead of you? Do you go back to being normal, regular old Brian? They also promise you'll automatically be in shape, although you can lose it if you don't.
Yeah. Trust me, I used to have a 6-pack in pipes. I know about losing it.
Yeah, but basically once they return you to sort of human Ryan, you'll be as handsome as you've ever been. And as ripped as you.
Ooh, so I get to have the hair back from when I was 18.
Yeah, in fact.
That stuff was luxuriously thick back then. Oh, it was magnificent.
The cure spell is a really good one because it gives you sort of youthful, exactly hair where you want it rather than the beast version.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good about hair where I want it. Right now.
So basically you pretty much return to where you are now. The question was, do you go for it or?
I have to get a word from my wife.
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain Zoe would dig it. Zoe digs, like dogs and cats and all that sort of thing. So if I wind up looking like one, then Daddy's now a dog. Hooray!
Yeah, and I guess you would, because if you turn back to yourself, you might lose some of those. You'd probably still have a book deal because they'd be interested in that story.
Beast.
You might not get the same movie parts and stuff. Although that whole thing was always a little bit tentative. You know how Hollywood is. So, there was no guarantee of those.
Man, beast, or well-mannered beast. The Ryan Kirkby story.
Yeah.
There we go.
So, I guess I never got my answer because you're like, that's up to the...
I'm going to have to say, based on what I know from my wife, she probably preferred me back as the way I was.
Yeah, she'd say, yeah.
And how buff are we talking? Like what sort of weightlifting sort of thing? Because she's got a brother who's getting if not at the top, he's in the top 3 for weightlifting over in the Philippines.
Yeah, you completely eclipse him. You're way stronger than that guy.
Oh,
is the beast.
Well, at least that way we'd have something to share. Okay, so spend some of this time in the 6 months, head to the Philippines, and meet the family.
Yeah. Although,
oh wait, maybe she doesn't want it that way, right?
I don't know if bigger people fly. Let's.
Well, Shaquille O'Neal's 8 feet tall. Right?
Let's give you a weight. Let's say 400 pounds. is what you would weigh.
I've seen bigger people on the air, so yeah.
And you'd be 400 pounds in sort of a,
I hope it's air conditioned though, because my gosh, 400 pounds of like heavy, like just fur coated muscles. That's gonna overheat pretty bad. But that's okay. I can dig it. So yeah, I probably have to go back the way I was.
Yeah.
Because that's the way my wife would prefer me.
Yeah,
But I don't think it would change who I am. So yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it would be more convenient because, being that big. We know people who are larger than average.
I do say I sometimes feel a little guilty because everything in society seems perfectly sized for someone exactly my height.
Yeah.
6 feet tall seems to be everything's designed for. So like my wife's looking for stuff up here, I grab that. My coworker is like, oh, where's this? Oh, I can see it right here because the angle works all nice for the shelves here. Bing bang boom, and yeah, everything seems to be almost perfectly sized for me. And I'm like, I sometimes think, you know what? If I was either a little bigger or a little smaller, life would be just a little bit more annoying.
Yeah.
But then again, life is always a little bit annoying. So. Yeah. Okay. But yes, if my wife says either way, I'm going to keep, a buff wolf bod. I keep the beast.
If she goes for it, yeah.
But knowing my wife, probably no.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because she fell in love with you the way you are, so.
I'd still be as lovey and whackable as ever.
Yeah. We're assuming that aren't any hormonal attitude.
I might go
stuff.
For, if I'm buff, I might go out for more, runs and walks and sort of thing.
Okay, yeah.
And if Zoe digs going out with that, and we're definitely going to hit the park as soon as the weather gets good for it. So yay.
That would be you think you can throw her in the air now?
It's okay. And she seems to like the water too. So I just put her on my broad shoulders and I'll doggy paddle around Moose Lake.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So the point of that, I forget why. Oh, is because we were asking why the beast goes back to being a human. So.
But yes, it's this story very much averts that standard line of thinking for the Disney movie. Mm-hmm. Lady is young lady is betrothed to be married, does not want to be married, fights for her own hand, causes issues, and winds up having to save the day by herself. Although not completely by herself. She's got brothers, she's got people, people aren't. It's not like everyone's out to get her, sort of thing, and But she has kind of made her bed, now she has to sleep in it, sort of thing. But yeah, it was very much a different story than the traditional one. If you weren't so well versed in a Disney movie, and I was to show you, a classic Disney movie, we'll say Cinderella, a more modern one such as, we'll go with Aladdin, seems like a nice one. Mm-hmm. And then I'll show you, the Brave, and then I say, okay, now, which two of these were made by the same, production company, and which one was made by, something else, you'd more likely say that Brave was done from something else, and not just because of different animation style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, different story style.
But that said, if it had been done sloppy and wrong, and just, we're doing it different for the sake of doing it different, it would have been something like a story of a Disney prince who winds up getting into trouble, is saved by a princess who defeats the big bad. Probably not by something like slipping. Maybe she saves the day by slipping on something and falling onto the big bad. That way you still get the guilt-free murder, right?
Right.
And then they wind up getting married, and that would be a subvert. It's oh yes, we've reversed the roles. And it's would that really be an entertaining movie? Well, it's Disney, so probably. But would it have been as great a movie as the subverted tropes in Brave? And I don't think so. I think it would have been. It would have been a mediocre movie if they just reversed the gender roles.
So you're saying they could screw it up? How
they could
how
have
could
done.
They? What's the wrong way to break tradition?
Well, without a reason to break tradition.
Uh-huh.
If you're breaking a tradition because some people say, well, this is the same old thing, do something different, then it's going to wind up not having the same amount as if you had broken tradition because I want to tell you a story with a twist on it because I think this would make for a good tale. And it does make for a very good tale with Brave.
Mm-hmm.
without trying to get into any spoilers, because like everyone kept it from me. I didn't think it was going to be the movie it was, so I wasn't spoiled. So I'm going to do the best I can not to spoil it either.
Okay.
But it was, it wound up becoming, a story about like a young lady who has to learn to mature up into the role she has as a princess and as a human being with like not being a dick, because you got to accept responsibility for the things you do.
Okay, yeah. But like, are you talking specifically about the tradition of
the tradition of a Disney formulaic story, the tradition of like being betrothed to a person you don't really even know. But
like they could just tell a story about a little girl or a young lady who has adventures and just not happen to run in it, because it is mentioned, like it's part of the story that she rejects suitors. Like that's an aspect of the story, but it could also be done that,
which is like, as I said, almost a shame, because like 2 out of 3 just like right off the bat seem like pretty decent people. They need some room to grow themselves. Right. The third guy, does not seem like he's got everything there.
But it could have been
not that bad a guy personality wise.
The story could have been told like it just never comes up. They're like, she just has it. She's just a princess who has adventures.
And that would be great, because that's what the first part is like her talking about how heavily regimented her life is. She's got to do this. She's got to do that. She's got 3 little brothers who get away with murder, but because she's the eldest and she's the princess, she's held to a higher standards. And it's like every part of her life is like like worked out for her. But every once in a while, there's a day she doesn't have to be a princess. And that's why they have a nice scene in like the first part where she goes out just running around, and she's got her bow and arrow, and she's like on their horseback as she's getting like bullseyes everywhere. And then she does some like rock climbing. Tastes some like fresh like waterfall water. It tastes so great, and she's having the time of her life. I would love to see a little short of just like her going off and having a little adventure. The fact that she's a princess doesn't really matter. It's all about, like her and just doing some awesome stuff.
Okay. But then it could be a story about just any person, right? Or
well, that's the thing, is she has a specific set of abilities, and skills.
Yeah.
Archery being the most notable one. But as it turns out, throughout the course of the movie, she also has some decent, wildlife survival skills. So she's not like a princess like, oh no, I'm out here in the wild. However can I possibly survive for any amount of time? No, she knows how to catch a fish. She knows what water to drink, what water not to drink. She knows that, no, these are poisonous berries. Do not eat them and all that sort of thing. She actually has, like, survival skill knowledge. So hooray!
That would be good. So what about this?
You could not replace her with Belle. You could not replace her with Beauty. You could definitely not replace her with Ariel. She very much has a different skill set than the other Disney princesses.
Okay. I'm trying to get at just a little bit more of this, like what not to do. Like, what if the sort of the suitors had actually, like, what if one of them had been like a couple of things: handsome.
2 out of 3 of them weren't bad looking.
Strong.
2 out of 3 weren't that bad.
Brave. Like, yeah.
The boasts that their parents give them all seem to indicate they've got at least higher than average levels of bravery.
Okay.
But whether or not that's just boasting or not, like unreliable narrator, right?
And maybe demonstrate it somehow. But also that they actually show a real genuine interest in her, like in getting to know her.
And that's the thing, as that's what really surprised me towards the one part there, was when they immediately agree. It's like, yes, this is a great idea. We'll win her heart before we win her hand.
Oh, I
like,
see.
We don't even know if we like her. Like the one guy who was like Wee Dingwall, he was like, according to like the marksmanship contest, he was going to wind up getting her hand in marriage. He was like, this was your idea, Dad. I don't even know if I like her.
Yeah.
So it's like honestly, between you, me, and anyone listening here, dude, Wee Dingwall, you are probably not going to get a better lady than Merida. She, like, she's a little bit above your level. You take that catch when you can get it, man.
Mm-hmm.
So, he had the most to lose, but he still stayed true to his convictions. Like, I don't even know if I like her. I'm like I was kind of blown away, because I kind of assumed, like, this, like, as I mentioned before, he seemed like the kind of guy that got hit in the head with, like, a horse's hoof, right?
Yeah.
He didn't seem like he was all there, but it's just like, oh, this young man has just some nice, like, conviction of like, like, he's got the same sort of beliefs as her. That's a sense of character. Congratulations. Not being a spacey, crazy guy is yeah. He still doesn't seem that smart, but at least he had some personality and some character. Yay! And that's one of the things I liked about the others, too, is that the other suitors it's not like they were all like complete waste of space. It's like, oh my God, if she winds up with any one of these three, it's just going to be an absolute tragedy. She's better off just running away from the kingdom and becoming some sort of fugitive from from the law. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know what? They're not bad guys. They seem pretty decent, like rough around the edges. But who isn't rough? You can make the argument that Merida was very rough around the edges by the start of the film, and it wasn't until she had the learning, moment that she really learned to smooth some of that stuff down. Because that's really what most of the stories are about, is smoothing off the rough edges on a Disney character until, oh, look at how well it shines and it's polished up, right? So yeah, I was quite happy to see that she was as flawed as they were, and they had good aspects like she did. So that way they weren't seen as like, oh yes, marriage is a complete waste of time for her. It's like, no, they have their merits. They're all not bad. Okay. Which itself is an interesting subversion from like the because I mean, if you see some of the older Disney stuff, if you weren't a prince, you were like rubber hose arm, goofy sort of like crazy nobody. It's like you barely looked like you qualified as a member of the human race.
Yeah. Well, Quasimodo.
So Quasimodo still was very well defined for his body, sort of thing, and he didn't wind up pulling out crazy stunts like. We'll say, we'll go Cinderella, and that guy who was always with the prince, like his advisor, has a crazy mustache, and he's doing his crazy looks, and his arms aren't always moving. It's like, oh, what's that? It's like, you got a noodle arm there, buddy, going on. And like if you weren't a prince and you weren't the princess, you were stylized, and like the more comedic they needed you to be, the less human you wound up looking. Okay. So, like, if there was, like, only two people that existed in the Disney universe, like royalty, like protagonist quality royalty, and then, like semi-human everyone else. And this one, was nice because Merida, she's like a full, she was that, royalty sort of like, oh, look at her, she's like a real person sort of thing. But the other people seem like that, too. Exaggerations here or there for size and brawniness and whatnot, but they still seemed like people.
Okay.
So it was subverted, but in a positive way. So, it was like, I was saying to myself, I was like, I don't know how this story is going to fully end. I can guess this is going to happen this way. This is going to be a revelation there. Maybe she does wind up getting married. I don't know.
Well, here's my question.
But I'd be okay with her, like with any of the, two out of three suitors more than the third one. Like that, like, I am very pro-intelligence, so the guy doesn't seem very smart, whatever.
Do you think it isn't so much breaking with tradition as just not following the story to the same, like the story is going to end the same way all the other Disney movies end, but the film just ends before that part of the story comes. It's just the film's like, oh, well, we're done, we don't have to tell that ending part because you can sort of make it up on your own or whatever.
Well, it did seem to open itself up for a sequel in the same style that Disney tends to do. So I will say that. Here's another thing. Most of the Disney movies have a very well-defined villain or villainess. Uh-huh. It's like Act 1 laid out. This one here, I mean, the villain, I guess the one who could be called the villain does make the appearance in the beginning of the movie, but you wouldn't really say this person is the villain throughout it. Mm-hmm. In fact, it winds up being that, like, her father winds up having some villainous traits, and she has to wind up stopping her dad from doing stuff that she finds objectionable. Mm-hmm. And so, it's like the question of, like, who is the villain in Brave? And you could say it's this guy, but he really doesn't have the same role that the villains do. He's much more an obstacle as opposed to the big bad. So in that case, you can say that, like, by one part in law, her mom and her dad were the villain for trying to, get her to be married, against her will, and without her knowledge, by and large.
Right, yeah.
You could say that the suitors were slightly villainous for trying to win her hand, and all that, and seeing her as kind of like as an object, because, well, that's what they're supposed to do. In the end, they wind up rejecting that. Yeah. You could say the witch is the big bad for wind up, doing things in ways that were unpredicted. Oh my goodness! Although I suppose if you really think about it, it's not that unpredictable. would help out to have a second watching, I suppose, for myself, just to see how predictable I could, get it upon, retroflexion.
Right. Okay.
But, in the end, it's just like, you could say even Merida winds up being partially a villain for, like, a person who wants to try and avoid the responsibilities at almost any cost. And the fact that I say at almost any cost means she does wind up having some borderline near villainous moments, sort of thing, when you think about it. Okay. But it doesn't wind up saying, like, oh my gosh, she's a villain. And so it winds up being a subversion of, like, who's the hero, who's the big bad? Well, she's the hero. But she's also, like kind of the one responsible for it. So the big bad is just like an obstacle that winds up happening. And then nobody's really the big bad from the traditional thing. And that wound up being very, very easy to roll with, because then it allows for more character time, more character development, as opposed to like, we must defeat you because you're bad and that must make us good automatically. And that's all you need to know about our personality. Ah.
Okay. So what would have made it go, like you mentioned, I'm still trying to think of what's too far, what's too out of tradition. Would it have been like too much if she had decided that she was a lesbian and wanted to marry a girl?
I would have been okay, because the thought crossed my mind. I was like, well, what if she's just doesn't like boys at all? What if she'd be more interested in finding another princess? I think I would have been okay with that as a viewer, but it would have been a little bit less realistic for the time frame. Getting away with not wanting to get married is one thing, but professing, lesbian, desires in that era would not have been received anywhere near as well as they are today, and thus it would have been more anachronistic. Mm-hmm. But as I said, as a viewer, I wouldn't mind if she winds up liking other girls, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I imagine, I guess my imagination of what would have happened is sort of she would have had a very close friend that people would have been like, oh, they're just like sisters, or she would have a servant girl or something.
Which is interesting that she doesn't seem to have anyone of her own age group where she's living, and maybe that's the reason why she doesn't feel like she can talk to anyone, or she doesn't feel like she's got anyone there to help her out. She feels like she's just being pigeonholed into this one role, because there's nobody there to have any oh, but look at this, this person's got to fill this role, that person's got to fill that role. There's no one in her age group to work with. So I suppose maybe it explains why she's feeling all this isolated and alone, because she kind of is for her age group.
And here's another thing that could break with tradition is, what if she falls in love with a peasant, like Aladdin, only Aladdin turns out to have,
She did seem to have a moment about that bodyguard, like a 12-foot tall, pile of muscle sort of guy she thought was one of the guys, because she was like, oh, the first guy, yeah, whatever, he's doing his thing, he's making the peck sense, yeah, blah, blah, blah. She's all bored. And you can see it in the body posture, where she's not sitting right in the chair, and she's not looking all princessly. She's just really waiting for this to be over. And then, talking about the third guy, and he's like, she suddenly sits up and starts taking notice. So if she had wound up falling in love with him, I'd have been okay with that.
Yeah.
It would have been a bit more of a subversion. And honestly, the guy was of such skill and ability. He was, all but nobility in, title.
And that would have been, the movie would have been then probably focused a little bit on, okay, how do they make this relationship work? How do they convince the kingdom that it's okay for her to be with this bodyguard guy or whatever?
Because who's going to stop the bodyguard? This is the guy that catches arrows, just without even thinking about it.
Yeah, but he's not like a king or anything, right?
No, but no one's going to stop him. He had the aura and the style about him, whereas like anything he tried, no one could best him on anything. This was the man of men, and so it's the same thing as Conan. Was Conan a king before he had the throne? He was a king in all but name. He had nothing could defeat him. He would have become king one way or another. If this guy had wanted to become king, he would have become king. So maybe it's best to let him marry a princess and you get the royal title without having to cause a war. Because you're not. I don't even know this guy's name. I want to look up this dude's name. This is a guy that winds up, every time he was in a scene, he was always head and shoulders, not just literally, but head and shoulders above everyone else, in the scenes, everything he was doing.
So that would have been an acceptable way to break with tradition, is to have this peasant sort of suddenly challenge for a throne and be like, oh, I guess you're allowed to do that now, because that's tradition be damned.
Well, that was kind of like one of the themes about it, like when to go with tradition, when to not go with tradition, sort of thing. In which case, though, I mean, like, he was worth, like on a battlefield more than all three of the first, sons of the clans put together. But like that was not meant to be. That was not part of how the story was going to go. And I think in the final scene, he actually winds up, like showing some emotion towards someone else in there. So it seems like, well, this story's going on with Merida. Over here, this man, this man amongst men finds a woman that catches his eye.
Yeah, and
so there's like a background story going on there.
And yeah, she's probably more appropriate to his station, which is sort of that whole there, because she, like, the main character Merida is sort of positioned across from these, princelings, or literally princes or whatever.
Well, that's the thing is her dad was chosen to be, the king by the other, heads of the clans.
Okay.
Because of his role being able to maneuver everyone on the battlefield and unite everyone together.
Yeah.
And so she technically has a higher royalty ranking than these other guys. She is the princess. They are just the eldest of the clans.
Yeah, but they're like, she's not going to find, unless she goes like to China or something, she's not going to find somebody of equivalent like kingship.
Given the era, she would have had to, hit Scandinavia, or maybe they would have had something equivalent over in the Germany area.
Yeah.
Or that's before Germany was Germany, right?
And yet they're not a Roman province at this time either, right?
No, I think one of the bits was them managing to repel the Romans.
Okay.
Yeah. She would have had to leave the British Isles to found anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. So it is still bound to tradition in a lot of ways, because
in a lot of ways, but it still breaks with it in many other ways. And so in which case, it's the not complete subversion of it that winds up giving it a nice basis to start off with and depart from, without going too far and just making it say, oh no, and it's just like so anachronistic, and it just doesn't make sense why everything's suddenly different and why anyone's accepting that, because tradition is like a huge part of history, for better and for worse. And I think you can make an argument about, better and worse is about like an equal divide for how it goes with tradition.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess probably, like,
because her getting away with, oh yeah, I'm gonna, fight for my, my own hand, and then, then she runs off and, like, in the end has, like, little to no repercussions, like, once everything settles back down again. Mm-hmm. That's pretty pushing it for its day and age of what you'd consider to be like realistic for a movie that has witches. Mm-hmm. But you know what? More than that, and I would have accepted it. But the more you push against what could be expected of the era, the less realistic it seems. The more you wind up getting driven out of the setting, and the more you realize you're watching a movie where they're trying to tell you this and give you a lesson on that.
Okay.
Whereas this one still flowed very smooth, really brought me in. I may wind up having it in the background and playing it again at least once this week before I have to return it to the library.
All right. Well,
and that's pretty high praise because like I got lots of stuff to watch, man.
Yeah.
I got movies aplenty. I got Citizen Kane with me this week. I got to watch that one before I'm returning it on Friday.
Okay. Well, should I do our social media and stuff? And
do social media, and then we'll go with a wrap-up note about subversions.
You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/thesimulationist, where you can type in little comments that appear on the left-hand side of the page. You can also find us on YouTube, youtube.com/thesimulationist, where you can type in little comments and then they appear underneath it's a video, it's a static image, it's this podcast.
It's a nice, easy way to get a hold of us, to listen to us when you don't have all the other stuff set up.
That's right.
If you're on somebody else's computer, hit us up with that.
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat. Thesimulationist@gmail.com is our email address, where you can send us, long essays and diatribes and whatever else.
If Merida was based off like a real world character or like an actual like mythological story, let me know. I would love to be able to dig into that.
Yeah, we could learn a little bit more about that.
Because apparently Mulan was based off of at least one real world historical character. Most of the others are based off fairly well known stories and books.
You can tweet at me at SpaceBoot1. That's me, Josh. That's my Twitter, SpaceBoot1.
Numeral 1, not
Numeral
O-N-E.
1. And you can, if you find us on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever, places where you're allowed to leave reviews, we would love to have your thoughts on the podcast. As many stars or thumbs as you feel like giving us.
+1.
Plus an extra additional one because we ask nicely.
Mercy.
And, of course, if you have nerdy friends who you think would love the podcast also, we would love to be in their iPhones or on their computers as well. So let them know that they should download the Simulationist for lots of talk just like you just heard. I think that's all. Yeah, that's good enough for social media.
Okay.
Final thoughts on what did we learn about tradition?
I think sometimes a piece of wood is more useful when it's bent into the shape of a bow as opposed to broken entirely. So when the traditions, and the tropes are bent and subverted, it's better than breaking them and reversing it all together. You get more use out of it.
Yeah.
Is that a nice way of describing it for good visual appeal?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. I think, traditions are there, they have their reasons. They're, people generally...
It makes it easy to get into the stuff if you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, they don't just invent them willy-nilly. But on the other hand, sometimes traditions are...
stifling.
Yeah, they're not useful anymore, or the original reason for them being has sort of fallen away, and you still have the tradition for...
I think with movies especially, you got to start subverting the traditions, because, if you were to do a play of, we'll say, Cinderella, then people would need to keep going back and seeing it whenever you're presenting it. But when it's a movie, people can watch it any time. Once they got it, they've got it forever. Or as long as the media holds out, right? Mm-hmm. In which case, it winds up accumulating, and all the times you tell the same sort of story, it winds up adding together, and it doesn't wash away the same way as oh yes, I saw a similar play about this about 20 years ago. I think it was like that at least. I don't think you saw it. You weren't around here then. Whereas with the movies, it's always there. It always accumulates. In which case, it's much fresher to get that subversion in, the change of pace, the change of the story and the tropes, because it's something different. Mm-hmm. You can't put it in with the same plot of, princess meets, prince saves princess from Big Bad, they get married, the end.
Right. And I just wanted also, a little point about tradition, is that sometimes you will subvert, or you think you're subverting a tradition, but you ultimately sort of end up supporting it, which is okay, but it's
to show what happens when you don't go with the tradition, and that's how bad things can get.
Yeah, or an alternate, the thing about how, they have this tradition of how the kids are brought in and they're they don't even know that they're about to, the boys and the girls are brought in, they're, okay, we're going to fit them together. But the part that's missing from the tradition is that the personal connection, or them getting to know each other, for example.
Yes.
And so it's not that the tradition is bad, or, it's the tradition still works for that society.
You need the whole tradition.
They're missing a piece of something that's a little harder to codify. You don't necessarily... traditions can be and then on the third day of the month we bring the families together to meet in the meeting place, but it doesn't mention the specific parts about how they actually have to communicate. It's
or the reasonings behind it all, don't eat fish on Friday because the ships always come in on Saturday, so that means that Friday fish is a 7-day-old fish, and you're probably going to get some nasty case of food poisoning from it.
Yeah, it could be something like that. Yeah.
So it's okay to not eat fish on Friday when you know the catch is not going to come in until tomorrow, and thus it's old fish. So really, don't eat old fish.
Yeah.
But not eating fish on Friday for the sake of not eating fish on Friday is a little ridiculous, because you're not getting the whole tradition out of it.
Yeah. So it's sort of an enlightened sort of view of the world, learning things about how things fit together.
Traditions keep it simple, but at a certain point you got to know when to learn the reasoning behind it.
So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, so I think that's a very nice way of putting it. Although I do like my bow thing, because it sounds almost like Confucius wisdom.
Yeah, and I guess, I feel like we've just sort of we've gone a long way. We've been very supportive of tradition. This whole discussion.
Well, for the purpose, we work with fiction, like tradition is tropes, and that is very easy to work with, and there's a lot of variation you can have in there.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is it's hard. You think you're getting out of tradition, but sometimes you don't even realize when you're following a trope or whatever, and you just do it subconsciously, or
just because you wanted to tell the story, and that's how it wound up telling.
Yeah, you just had a story in you that happened to follow these things, which is, I mean, again, it's sometimes you can't.
So long
help
as the story's good, it's not an issue. It's when it winds up becoming like, wow, that was so generically formulaic. I hope that you just like copy pasted paragraphs from something else.
Yeah.
But speaking of tradition, you'll hear from us again in 7 days.
The weekly tradition.
Which is not a bad thing.
Absolutely. I like it. I've been Josh Gillette.
I've been Ryan Kirkby.